Just so everybody knows. Welcome to what is this? Force Connect, streaming Star Wars Network. Force Connect, it's live, and that's why you get that crazy weird intro every single time. I'm Pete Flitzer. I'm one of the hosts of this crazy, wacky Friday night Star Wars call-in show, and I'm here with Chris Ryans and Nick Milkey. And Chris, how are you doing tonight?
Oh, I'm doing great.
I see you're wearing a little bit of green on this St. Patty's Day. The green Superman.
Happy St. Patty's to all of you out there. My great grandmother, I think, is Irish. So
yeah, just a little bit of Irish. You gotta, So I'm gonna go over to Nick. Nick, how are you on this St. Patrick's Day today?
I am still not Irish. Okay. I am half Scottish and half German, but I'm here. I found a Star Wars shirt that had green on it, so excellent. I feel like I'm, a little bit in the game. But more importantly, and if I'm going to stay on brand,
sure,
I have Irish whiskey and I have Guinness, and it can't be St. Patty's Day without, some Guinness and some Irish whiskey. So we'll get back to that with our toast in a few minutes.
I have not, I haven't had a Guinness in probably about 2 or 3 years, and only because it's the beer that drinks like a meal, and that's a commitment. And it's not that
you're like exhausted afterwards. Like
like I got to take a nap after a Guinness, and no, I don't know if it's quite that bad, but I do like a Guinness, but I am drinking a beer because you have to, because it is St. Patrick's Day, and
absolutely,
it's nice to be out. And hey, listen, it's a Friday night, and you're all hanging out with us watching a Star Wars show. So what's the approach? Sloth? Is that the way to
Slancha?
Slancha? That sounds good. But we are going to be talking about all the Irish people in Star Wars, like Ochi of Boston. We'll be talking about him and many others.
Bill Burr. We've got all kinds of things.
We're not going to be talking just about Irish people, but we are going to be talking about crazy Star Wars theories that are starting to come from the amazing episodes that we've been getting, and we're definitely going to want to talk a little bit also about sort of the reaction to the book of Pen Pershing that we saw this week, as well as a Bad Batch episode, which I think we've forgotten about the word filler, and anybody wants to call that one that filler has missed an important. There were so many good things about that episode. Yes, it probably advanced the Bad Batch story further than many of the episodes we've had in quite a while. It was so important from that respect. But before we get started, Nick, do you want to do a little housekeeping and then maybe raise a toast to the good people?
Absolutely. The biggest housekeeping thing, the easiest thing to throw out there is to go to streamingstarwars.com. That's where you can kind of find your one-stop shop for all of our social media channels. You can also see them here on the screen. We are mostly at the SSW network. Most places you go. We have a Patreon. We would love for you to join our Patreon stream. For as little as $3 a month, you can be connected, especially when we do Around the Galaxy interviews. And we'll talk about this a little bit more at the end, but we had an amazing interview this past Wednesday night with Kyle Newman, the director of Fanboys. He is one of the producers on the Disturbance in the Force documentary that's going to come out sometime later this year, all about the holiday special. Pete and I were lucky enough to get a screener to watch that and then get to talk to him about that. So live patrons, Patreon supporters, you get to watch those interviews when we record them live. So I know Matthew Harrington hung out that night. I think Jeff was there for a little bit. So a little peek behind the curtain. We do other stuff, meet and greets, questions, swag. I know Pete's working on some swag actually for some patrons, hopefully coming up soon, little tease. So check that out. And also from there, and you can see Pete is modeling currently this evening the Bad Batch t-shirt. A classic, and you can go to streamingstarwars.com and also find our merch store. And there's mugs on there, there's t-shirts, there's a hat. Pete showed me a picture of a hat today, a ball cap.
Just added the hat. Yep.
So lots of good stuff. So first and foremost, thank you for being here tonight. We're excited to hang out with you. We hope that you will click the link and call into the show. We do say that, this is the show where you're the guest. So the link is in the chat. We will dropping it periodically over the course of the evening. We want to hear your thoughts, especially once I start unpacking all of my crazy in a few minutes.
I am so excited to see your craziness.
I'll do the preamble for that after the break. But
sounds fair.
So check out streamingstarwars.com. All the things you need to know, all the ways to be a part of who we are, what we do with this network, and keep up with all the things that are coming up. We've started having podathon conversations. So there's lots on the horizon, and we're very excited. Excellent. So we also start every show with a toast. This is no different. It is certainly St. Patrick's Day. We want to toast our Irish brothers and sisters and St. Patrick. I want to throw a quick shout out to the underserved populations of Guam. And then, on a little bit more serious note,
that's a classic inside joke.
That's a deeper cut, Chris. It's in your text message.
If you scroll back about 4,600 texts, you'll find where that one came in.
But also, and on a little bit more serious note, as I make a shift change, I saw that we lost actor Lance Reddick today.
Yeah, man.
And Lance Reddick was an amazing actor in so many things. For me, he was certainly a big part of The Wire. So many other things. Lots and lots of stuff. He was 60 years old, so you hate to lose a talent like that at an early age. So we want to raise a glass to Lance, to everybody hanging out and watching, and to all of our Irish friends. Sláinte.
Happy Star Wars. All right.
Man.
Tasty.
It's still good.
I feel a bit bad about having, when we started this show, Chris was always like, I'm just going to have like a 7-Up. And now he's like,
I'm not a drinker.
Yeah. He's like, is that cool? I'm like, totally cool. And then Nick keeps sending him alcohol, and he ends up, just partaking. But that's good.
He's to my side.
What do you like about alcohol, Chris? I don't like the taste. And here comes Nick, like, hey, this one's peanut butter flavor. I'm like, oh, really?
Who doesn't like peanut butter?
That's right. Can't lose.
So, Chris, since you have started having a couple of sips, and before we hit our first break, let's talk a little bit about what we got this week. It wasn't direct Scar Squadron stuff, so we've beaten that dead horse a little bit. But what was your impression of? Let's start with. We'll just quickly hit on Bad Batch, and what was your takeaway from this week's episode?
Pete, I don't know why you think that this is not in any way connected to Scar Squadron. It absolutely is. You haven't seen the bigger picture yet. You gotta wait, but it all will make sense in the fullness of time. No, this was. Look, I love like episodes that'll go off the beaten path a bit, and like seeing this virtual paradise of a living situation they have on Pabu. I thought was fantastic. Yeah. I was like, but when's the other shoe gonna, when's the other shoe gonna drop? Like, there's got to be some kind of give to all this. Yep. So, I thought it was a fantastic episode.
So I will give you sort of a the only thing I know about next week is last night I was watching our good friends over at Star Wars Explained, and they were doing their weekly discussion, and I had made a comment in the chat that they picked up on where I said that next week's episode of Bad Batch is called Tipping Point. And I said I felt like this episode could have been called Tipping Point, because it really was. It was where, Hunter, there were a couple really major things. Like Shep said, this is a great place to raise your daughter. And he didn't say she's not my daughter. Like, he didn't back off from that father figure thing. So he's tipped. You saw Tech as a human being. He was having fun, as much as fun as Tech could have. And, him and Fee were
something with him and
looking good. But what Molly and Alex said was, well, since we've seen the screeners and the last one we saw was next week, I can't tell you what happens next week, but I can say that next week is a tipping point also. So it's like, so now, when you're down to your last 3 episodes where we've come so far with this season and all we've seen and all the growth, I mean, and that's the thing too. A lot of people threw out the F word, the filler word, during this season, and
that
a lot of people don't know what that word means, Pete.
For sure. I mean, these were the same people that said we can't watch Mandalorian anymore because now we've seen Andor, and then they complained that this week's episode of Mandalorian was somewhat like Andor. So, but it's interesting because this show, the amount of growth in these characters that we've all, well, I know Nick, you and I have said it. When we met the Bad Batch at the end of Clone Wars, we're like, oh, they're cool, they're interesting. I don't need a full season, and now I love. And so I don't know how many of you
completely.
I don't know how many of you caught the. I did an unboxing today. I got this little clone trooper back there. Today I did an unboxing with Jack, and I asked Jack who his favorite clone is, and he said, well, does it count if they don't have their chip anymore? I said, well, sure. Who's your favorite clones? He goes, Wrecker, Tech, and so he's in. Like, this show has become his.
And he was always a Rex and Cody guy.
Yeah. So they've displaced his Clone Wars guy. So and I'm happy to see the show growing. Is where I'm going with that. Nick, what was your thoughts on it?
It's pretty much the same thing, and I actually did have the moment when who was it in Fee? Tech, yeah. Like, my first thought was actually, Pete's wrong. He was saying Hunter. And
I was saying Hunter. I was, yes.
But no, it really just, it continues to unpack the thing that I have been so fascinated with over the course of really this entire Disney TV run for the most part, which is really getting the insight into what does it look like when you transition away from clones into conscripted stormtroopers into the Empire. And we've gotten so many teases. We get the thing in Kenobi where you have the clone trooper who's panhandling for money on Daiyu. We get, the episodes a few weeks back when they were doing the legislation, like, how do we help our troops? How do we help these clones? The decommissioning, like, having something like Pabu and having this thing of like, oh, it gives them a view of like what it could be. When he says we'd like to stay for a while, like there's development there that is continuing to say, this is just 4 or 5 guys. Like, there's hundreds of thousands of millions of these out around the galaxy that are also going to have to figure out how to do what Cut did in that episode in the first season, when you go and see Cut and Sue on the planet that they were, and they're living and trying to farm and create a life. And it just creates that transition, but it also shows us the continual brutality of the Empire, because they were just equipment. They were old equipment that's outdated and disused, and we're passing on it. So I'm here for it. It's big story building disguised as fun, cartoony kind of something.
Right. And just because it isn't like, and I think I said this, in a tweet like Wednesday morning or something, just because there isn't a no, I am your father, like there isn't a moment like that in every episode, does not make it lesser than.
Right.
That's just one thing that always gets me with people. Yeah, they were calling it filler because there wasn't nothing heavy in this one. There wasn't like the any of the Crosshair episodes, like each one is important. If they don't know by now that, Filoni and team, like there is a plan, there is, an overarching story, and everything is put in there for a reason.
Yeah.
Purgles like, come on.
Yep.
Like, people are like, oh, this is ridiculous. Space whales? That's dumb.
5, 6, 7 years ago, we got hyperspace traveling fucking space whales that are, and now here we are, first episode of, Mandalorian season 3. Like,
right.
And everything's coming back. And it's what I said. It's what I said last week or the week before. They're playing a much bigger game than, honestly, I think even a lot of us deep cover nerds realize they are. And it's impressive. And I'm
but there's an interesting thing going on, and we'll talk about it actually probably more in 2 weeks, but I want to reference it right now because a guy named Matt Singer, I was just looking up his name, from Screen Crush, wrote an article today about the fact that Mandalorian season 3 is taking a big turn, a big commitment to the lore, and that changes the way the story is received. And I can't completely disagree with him. In fact, I talked to my dad, though I referenced my 75-year-old dad, and he said the same thing. He said it's interesting because it's a different show. Now, it's not better or worse. And we are going to have Matt on the show in 2 weeks, and we're going to talk I'd love to get his perspective on it. But it is interesting because you do take an episode of The Mandalorian like this week, which started with maybe the best space scene since Rogue One, or not space, but fighter scene, because it was all in atmosphere.
Absolutely.
And ended with, Bo-Katan accidentally joining the cult, and the middle 40 minutes was Dr. Pershing and Katie O'Brien's character, I can't remember her name, Kane.
Elia Kane.
And really pushing the story forward. And I know, Nick, you've got some thoughts on that as well, and that you'll go through in a minute. But pushing the story forward. But what I think, and I'd love your guys, you two to speak to comment on it as well, is we are now officially in the Mandoverse. We were introduced to it through season 1 of Mandalorian, which was this fun story of a guy who had no commitments in his life, and now he's pulled into being a father. Season 2 was sort of the completion of his journey, and now we're in the Mandoverse, and he happens to be the marquee, but we're in the Mandoverse. What do you guys think?
You're going to get like I love how every show has a purpose. Like if it's within that same time frame as the Mandalorian, it's every show has its purpose, and it leads to, or it's melded in with what's going on with Mandalorian. And that by the end of this, there's going to be, Ahsoka, maybe Luke, Din Djarin, Boba, whoever from Skeleton Crew, that sort of thing. Like, all these characters are going to be coming in to possibly stop the formation of the First Order.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, they're going to fail, which is going to suck. But it's going to be fantastic to see like how this happens and where it goes. I am super excited. I'd say one thing I do love is that they're carving out this this point in time, and I think that each of these characters in here, as much as we all love Han, Luke, and Leia and all that, these characters are like this era's Han, Luke, Leia, Chewie, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I just love that that we're getting these major characters in this. Or major characters out of these, sometimes side characters and whatnot. I think it's incredible.
Yep, you're leading with those guys, right? Chris, Nick, what are your thoughts?
Just that I love what Angry Tasty Cake said in the chat. Filoni and company, they're playing 4D chess. Like they see the board in a bunch of different ways, and you can take an Mandalorian episode and throw an Andor-esque middle into it, and it's all going to relate. And I'm watching it, seeing 5 things. I'm going, oh, there's that, and there's that, and there's that. But similarly to you, my dad called, and he was like, so I like the beginning, and I like the end. He was like, now the middle, he's like, tell me about that. And, after I gave, 2 minutes of they're setting up some other things, and, I said, it's pointing to some bigger pictures and some bigger other shows. He went, oh, okay, cool. And he was good. He's ready for next week. And,
but are they gonna lose people? And I think that's a really interesting.
Well, and that's a great point, because Danny just said in the chat, she said, I'm struggling a bit this season. To be honest, I feel like the Mando, the character, has regressed a little bit.
Yep. I would agree. I mean, he's so committed to the cult. I believe that we're going to have him learn from it, but and he'll change his ways. But
absolutely.
I mean, honestly, he is what's the phrase? A himbo, right? He is completely clueless. Just like
he's very dogmatic.
Yeah, Bo-Katan says to him, "Did you see anything in the water?" And instead of being like, "Should I have?" He was like, "No."
And that was an interesting little bit too. What is the hand? Yeah, what is the hand that she's playing with that? That's fascinating. 2 things. Danny, if Canadian internet is cooperating tonight, we'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear more about your take and kind of the regression of Mando. That'd be great to hear about. I also love what JD said. He said, I feel like Star Wars has never been about one character. And we're getting a ton of that.
Yep.
Certainly with Mando and Bad Batch both. You have those episodes where you're with the Bad Batch crew for 2-3 weeks in a row, and then you have a Crosshair episode, and it's just Crosshair, and it's Crosshair and some new characters, and it's Mayday, and but you're expanding that world, you're developing that layers, because guess what? it's a big ass galaxy. There's a lot of people out there. It's not just, even if we end up on Tatooine, every other thing, there's a lot of people that come through Tatooine. We've clearly learned that in the course of 46 years.
Yep. Well, we're going to take a real short break, and then we're going to play a clip of a conversation that Nick and I had 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
And then we're going to hear what Nick thinks about where that's going, and we're going to take your calls. But we're going to take a real quick commercial break, and then when we come back, we'll play that clip, and we will be back in just a minute. Hang out and make sure to call in and talk Mando and Bad Batch with us.
1977, Star Wars exploded onto screens, changing movies and people forever. Today, the first generation of Star Wars kids are now the prime demographic. But it's not always easy for Generation X to find their voice online. Millennials and Generation Z produce the majority of user-generated content, and the algorithm leads too easily to toxic YouTubers with a less than inclusive agenda. We all need a place to relive what it is we love about the galaxy far, far away without the negativity of clickbait or the shouting voices of the would-be influencers. That place is the SSW Network, a hub of content created by people who love the saga that's inclusive, upbeat, and real. With programs that encourage them to stay connected to those childhood memories and make new ones with the people they love. A place to hear from and connect with new and classic creators, celebrities, authors, and superfans. The SSW Network keeps the conversation going about new and original content and remembers what it means to be a Star Wars fan. The SSW Network. Every generation has a story.
Throw out a hot take. I think you could say that Dave Filoni fixed the prequels. What he did by creating those stories in the Clone Wars era sort of filled in the gaps. And for people like you and I that may or may not have loved the prequel movies, he changed them. He fixed, quote unquote, fixed. And I'm going to use a broad statement, recognizing that it's. I'm overstating it, but he fixed the prequels. He's working on potentially fixing the sequels. Now, I don't mean that the sequels need to be fixed, but there is no doubt a rift in the fandom. There's no doubt a inconsistency in the story, and so perhaps in this Mandalorian time frame, he's doing two things. One is he is making connections for people who felt disconnected when the sequels came out, right? Who he is intentionally and very, very effectively connecting to things that are now legends by throwing you a Thrawn, by throwing you some of these one-off sort of mentions of things that people like you and I who lived off the EU. And honestly, I mean, point blank, I was not disappointed when they got rid of the EU. I thought parts of it were confusing, parts of it were not great, but interesting, right? And so here's where I think it's going. I believe that we're going to see a situation where things like Heir to the Empire and Dark Empire, which are two very solid and very, almost considered gospel by people before Disney purchased Lucasfilm, I think we're going to see a version of that in the flowing stories. And I don't think we're going to see Han and Leia, and I don't think we're going to see, obviously they're not going to totally retcon it and give us twins and all that stuff, but I do think we're going to get the story that happened in that time frame from a different point of view. Are we going to finally live some of those things that people expected to see as the sequels in a different sort of way of telling those stories? Would that kind of storytelling help heal the fandom? So that was from 2 years ago, January 5th, 2020.
So a couple of things very quickly. First of all, if you go back and watch this clip on the replay later, notice how few helmets are in Pete's background as opposed to how many helmets are in Pete's background.
Yeah,
now.
that's a collection that's got a little.
But also, and I put it in the chat, I just have to say this because this is important. 2 years ago, I've had Podcast of the Wheel since 2017, chugging along here and there, sporadic. During quarantine, during COVID, it changed. It became a different thing. I started doing Sunday night live streams. That was when Pete, who was one of the earlier Star Wars podcasts that I found and followed, invited me to be a guest on Around the Galaxy. That was such a big freaking deal to me. Like, I borrowed a computer from a friend so I wouldn't have internet lag. Like, I did all these things. But it was also really funny because, like, that was my setup overall. But it was literally, and I'll have to put us a picture on it on Twitter. I've sent it to Pete before. My laptop sat on top of a step ladder with a lamp behind it while I sat on like a stool that I made out of leftover lumber in my garage. Like, it's a whole deal.
It was an
compared to where we are
Alabama
now.
internet studio is what it was.
Without question. Without question. And we're only small steps above it now. But,
No, it's the same here. I just have more helmets. I'm not in that much. But that's totally fair. And I had less facial hair, which facial hair I did have was not this white. So things have changed a lot.
And I also realized that was me coming out of my quarantine where I didn't get a haircut for a year. And there's a lot more hair on top, and the beard had been very unchecked. But I was also interviewing for jobs at that point.
Right.
So
you had
probably had tried to rein it in somehow.
Well, I think overall it went well, but most importantly,
yes,
I need to. I don't toot my own horn too often, but damn, I am.
You called it.
Top of things. I called it. I called it before they. This is what we're gonna get, and I didn't call Scar Squadron. Chris, I see you up there. I see you smiling. I see you giving me the face. I didn't see Scar Squadron coming, but I also we hadn't seen Tantus mentioned yet because we hadn't seen Bad Batch, so. I'm not, and again, I'm not trying to take credit for amazing brilliance, although it's pretty close. But I do. I mean, so Chris, maybe answer the question that I asked at the end there before we get to Nick's wild theories. Will this sort of storytelling, bringing in some of this EU stuff, because clearly it's on a lot of it's on its way, not all of it. Right. Is that going to impact? The fandom in a positive way, or and that's such a bad question because I know the way the fandom reacts to things that we think they're going to like.
You could give the fandom exactly what it wants,
and
they will still a bitch about something because you gave us Thrawn, but I don't like those little like his brow, like there's something. People will find something to complain about. It doesn't matter. So no, you can't please them all. You can't, no matter what you throw in there. And I hope they don't throw in a whole bunch of EU stuff because I didn't like a lot of it.
Yeah, I mean, but, like I said in the video, there, like I didn't love all of it. Some of it was really bad.
Some of it to me was like straight up science fiction. I'm like, that ain't Star Wars, right? Like the Yuuzhan Vong. I forgot who was it.
Yuuzhan Vong.
I'm sorry, the guy for Screen Crush. What's his name again?
Ryan Airy?
No.
Oh no, Matt Singer. Yep.
And he talked about what he wanted to see, in the sequel trilogy era, or I'm sorry, as who these like the Manoverse Avengers will fight. Right. It'll be the Yuuzhan Vong. I audibly yelled no at my monitor because I'm like, no, please, they are Star Trek villains, and I'm not saying that as a bad thing. I'm just saying, to me, it just doesn't fit.
Klingons.
Yes, they're Klingons mixed with xenomorphs or something. I don't know, but I'm not a huge fan of a lot of the EU stuff. Some is cool. Most of it is Star Wars cosplay or science fiction.
Yep, no, it's true, and it's funny.
So I couldn't get into it.
No, but it's so great to hear you say that because honestly, that was my biggest issue with. And I remember even reading the Thrawn novels, which I liked a lot, but they felt science fiction-y. It was a lot of I mean, and honestly, this is what stopped me from jumping into the High Republic, and I'm sure I will get to it at one point. But the first chapter, the first book from the High Republic felt like it was coming from the Enterprise. It felt like it was very
I know what you're talking about.
Very science fiction-y. That said, I also know High Republic is trying to do completely different things, so I'm cool with that. But before we get to some calls, Nick, you have you've been spending the afternoon in front of a whiteboard.
Oh no.
Screenshot.
I've got my virtual bulletin board and yarn.
Let's
And I do want to throw in here just for a second what Dale said, which I wholeheartedly agree. When everyone has a different experience with Star Wars 2, different things resonate with different people. And we
100%.
on this screen, as a part of this network, we support that. Like, we are all about that. Everybody has a different thing. What works for you doesn't work for me. The difference in all of that is
We don't bitch about
I don't have to be pissed that you like something that I don't like. And I don't have to be pissed if there's something out there that's not my thing. I can go, cool. That's for Dale. That's for Pete. That's for Chris. And I get to move on. Same way. You both expressed, Pete in the video, Chris right now. And I agree with you. Like, as a kid who spent a lot of time with that old EU and grew up with that, and that was my transitional period before, Star Wars started coming back, I have a very, very deep spot in my heart for the Heir to the Empire Thrawn trilogy. I love those 3 books. I really, really do. Yuuzhan Vong, kiss my butt. Crystal Star, out. Like, there's a bunch of garbage in some of that stuff. It's just, but it wasn't for me, and nobody forced me to read it.
Right.
That said, as Pete talked about in his prediction 2 years ago, as we have seen even in the articles that have surfaced over the course of this week, and Filoni making the comment about, hey, there's a bigger picture here. Hey, there's other things going on. Yeah. I've been building this theory. I've seen it develop over a while. I'm going to put this up on the screen. And what I love is I have not shown Pete or Chris this, so we get to get some reactions in real time. This is my Mando conspiracy theory board, and I hope Angry Tasty Cakes is paying attention back in the background, because I know that we're gonna jive on some things here. There's a lot here.
Yeah,
Lego.
I love it. I and you have to describe it word for word, because people are going to listen to this on Monday. So
that's right.
We got to hear how this goes.
Okay.
I see Mara Jade.
Okay. Wait
wow,
for it.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to, as best I can.
This is wonderful.
As best I can, and I'll have to post this screenshot on Twitter later. I'm going
the
to
random Purgles.
Yep.
For those of you listening, we are going to tweet this picture later that you can share with your friends, family, and maybe even use it at Easter's coming. You may have a big family lunch or dinner, and you might need to explain what the hell is happening with the Mandalorian. And luckily, I think Nick has you hooked up.
Things are going to get weird, but give me just a few minutes. I'm going to try my very best to concisely take us through some of this. Basically, the ultimate thesis of this whole conspiracy theory board is the Mandalorian, the Bad Batch, Ahsoka, any of the things that exist in that same timeline. Well, Bad Batch is really before, but you know what I mean, as far as like planting the seeds with cloning and that kind of stuff. This is filling the gap between where we are now and the sequel trilogy. As Pete said, whether it's fixing it or not, it's filling those gaps in between. So in The Mandalorian, enhancing it, absolutely. Filling in those bits of the story that we haven't gotten, because there's 25 to 30 years worth of stuff going on in this period. So we've got The Mandalorian, we've got Dr. Pershing and Grogu, we've got the Jar of Snokes, from those first couple seasons. What does that point to? We know we've got Omega. We know we have Nate Messer was on last week and talked about, that theory of, Grogu and Omega, the ability to clone somebody with, Jedi abilities. So we've got the cloning thing. Somehow Snoke returned. We know that we get to that in the sequel trilogy. It's cloning, planting all those little seeds. The things that we get from the Heir to the Empire books is we get Mount Tantus dropped by name.
Yes. Yeah.
That was a huge part of that Heir to the Empire trilogy. When we start to branch out, we get a little bit crazier. We get all the stuff about Mandalore and how we think Mandalore is uninhabitable. Last week or the week before. Can't get there. But he gets down below the surface. It's kind of a ruse, or it's kind of a, atmospheric deal. There was a thing where the Empire in the old EU books were poisoning the home planet of Thrawn's boy Rook, Honegger, and salting the fields and salting the crops to keep them subjugated, to keep them under control. Planetary control. What if the First Order's final order fleet are being built on the other side of Mandalore because everybody thinks you can't go there and there's a planetary shield?
I like that. And it's funny. You made some reference to that last week, I think, and I'll stop because I have theories as to who attacked Bo's castle, and I think it's directly related to your board here.
Absolutely. So that's it. What if, she says in the episode this week, something about, pissing off Imperial warlords. Well, who's the biggest Imperial warlord hanging out there on the fringes? It's that blue-faced, red-eyed bastard that everybody's waiting to see.
Yep.
That's racist.
Up in the top right corner, we see the picture of the final. It's Cad Bane, right?
Oh, Jesus! No, they all look alike.
Oh my!
So, up in this top right corner, we've got a picture of that Final Order fleet that comes up miraculously from underground and whatever. But there's a little katana over the top of that because in the old EU and the Thrawn trilogy, we had the katana fleet, that fleet that was lost to space.
I was trying to figure out what you were doing with that. Yeah, okay, that's cool.
They were slave rigged. All those ships that were going together that could be controlled, being built in secret. Thrawn inside the Maw, whatever it was, the Imperial Hidden Science, deal. We've got, of course, Palpatine in the middle of all this. I had to throw in Christopher Lloyd, who is supposed to be in season 3, but we don't know who yet. He would be the perfect sample version of a cloned Jedi and bring in Jorah Sabath. Like, there's a way for that to fit. Down below, Palpatine.
Would it be Joe?
One you or two. That's up to somebody smarter than me. Now,
wait a minute.
One of the
is Joruus, is he Snoke? Because that could happen. What if he's
Well, and again, we hear Pershing in his little TED talk that he's doing in the Imperial, whatever. We hear him talking about strand casts. He talked, the first cast is this, the next cast is this.
So irresponsible to be thinking like this, but it's so fantastic. I'm loving it.
But it's great. So there's an avenue for elements of that to pop up. And of course, it's basically taking an existing story or an oldly existing story and adapting it in ways that work. Prime example, down below Palpatine, we have the picture of Elia Kane. We also have the picture of Mara Jade. No, I am not proposing that they are the same person.
Okay.
But what if Elia Kane is a Hand of Thrawn, which is what Mara Jade's title was?
Or what if Elia Kane and Mara Jade get together?
Okay. Totally fair.
That can happen.
What if Elia Kane is a Hand of Thrawn and this bigger agenda that she's working, where she's driving Pershing into the brainwashing machine, and we're getting to this point where she has a bigger agenda even than working for Gideon. Like she's a splinter cell. She's a sleeper cell. I'm sorry.
She was the communications officer, but the communications officer, that's so low level. She's actually like the right-hand person of.
She's doing things.
I like that a lot.
It connects to Thrawn, obviously, because we know Thrawn is teased. We know with the Ahsoka series, with the way Rebels ended, all that kind of stuff. So, of course, also down in the bottom right corner, I've got Ahsoka, I've got Sabine. You will notice I've got 2 Ezra Bridgers.
I did.
I've got questions.
And one is smaller than the other. So if you want to throw in your bigger Luke theory, you can tie that in there as well. But
I see where you're going with that. Yeah.
But what if instead of in the old Heir to the Empire series where you have Luke and the cloned Luke that he has to fight, what if that's replaced with Ezra? We find Ezra, and part of this clone experimentation, also trying to clone a Jedi, is a cloned version of Ezra.
God, Ezra is Snoke!
That could be. I'd love that. We all thought Ezra was DJ from
That's right.
Last Jedi. I mean, not all of us.
Wrong about that.
I did.
So there's a lot here. There's other things that could plug. Honestly, I didn't even plug in. I should have put a copy of the picture of the Bloodline book on the front of this, because Bloodline ends up basically planting seeds for the First Order. My overarching big theory is this all points to how do we get to where we are in the sequel trilogy.
Sure.
With the Final Order, with Palpatine returning. And there's so many different avenues that it can travel, and all these seeds are being planted, whether it's cloning the ships where they go to steal the portable lab station. What if those ships that are being decommissioned end up being some of the ships that get stolen and retrofitted and become, a part of, the rest of this?
Maybe, but I thought that they were all decommissioned and turned into Starhawks. That's
what
from
we were told.
But I mean, we saw that in Star Wars Squadrons. Well,
Okay,
that's right. There was the whole drama around the ethical thoughts around. Is it you're taking Star Destroyers, but you're still.
And that was interesting because when they were talking about the equipment, and she was like, it's a lab station. And he was like, but it's an Imperial lab station. You're like, it's still equipment. Like, equipment doesn't have a motive.
Right. Mind flare.
It becomes a different thing. Yeah, the mind flare. And to answer Dale's question, I thought Mara Jade was the Emperor's Hand. Exactly correct. And one of the theories I'm positing is maybe Elia Kane is an Emperor's Hand. There could be more than one, serving in this. Yeah.
Unless you had one chopped off.
Yeah,
then it'd be a Skywalker. But then Ray Palpatine became Ray Skywalker. So,
hands flying everywhere.
Where's the board?
This is a lot to take in. I'm fully aware of that.
I love everything about it.
I just think that the stories that are being planted have the ability to, guess what? Let your imagination run wild, because it's fake and it's in space.
It's fake and it's in space, and it's everything that we want to see here. So,
yeah.
Well, you just laid a ton of stuff on us, and again, please tweet this out as soon as
will.
Humanly possible. I think it's an important tool for friends and family, and maybe this will help Matt Singer from Screen Rant, and he'll understand it as well. But we have a bunch of callers who are dying to get in and share with us their perspectives on probably not just that. Which, Nick, listen, if you're listening to the show on Monday or sometime before you watch Mando on Wednesday, which is probably the best way to do it, go to the 35-minute section of the video on YouTube so you can watch. This section needs to be enjoyed with video. We'll probably even cut it out separately. But before we get to our callers who are so graciously waiting in the back, we're going to take a real quick break. And when we get back, we want to hear their thoughts on Nick's thoughts. And we will be back in just a moment with more Star Wars Force Connect. Welcome back to Force Connect, the streaming Star Wars Network live Friday night show. If you're listening on Monday when we drop this or sometime thereafter, you can join us on Friday nights. We are live on YouTube, youtube.com/@the-SSW Network, or go to streamingstarwars.com to link to all of our places where you can find us. And if you just watched that break, if you got the video version, you saw that next week we have a special guest host. We have Brian from Pink Milk. I will not be here next Friday. My band is playing a rare Friday night gig, and so I will not make it. I will try to dial in though at some point, but I am excited that Brian will be here in my stead, and I'm looking forward to seeing what comes out of that. But Nick, we got a couple callers in the back. I'm gonna just randomly run one of our little intro videos, and I'll let you pick the caller at random.
Awesome.
So here we go.
Love it.
Greetings, Exalted One.
as a young man who was raised in the South and raised with the very basicest of ladies first, I am so excited to welcome Danny to the show. We're so excited to see you, and I can't wait to hear the thoughts you have about Mando and kind of how he's regressed maybe a little bit. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Excellent.
So good to see
glad
you.
to see you.
Danny,
So-
I actually talked before you get started. I actually talked about you the other day. I was a guest on a podcast, Sci-Fi Talk, and he asked me. He said, "How did you know your show was taking off?" And I referenced your Starbucks photo that you took with my show on your phone while you were drinking the coffee, and I was like, somebody in another part of North America is listening to my show, and that was great. So, anyway, how are you?
With Canadian internet, no less.
Yeah, really.
I joke.
The commitment.
How's it going?
Good. So I just want to say, because earlier I raised the point, and I just want to always put the disclaimer that just because I have little critiques doesn't mean I hate Star Wars, doesn't mean I hate The Mandalorian.
And you know, when
you can have nuanced thoughts,
right, when you're on Force
Yes.
Connect, you don't need to make that disclaimer, because I think we all know that. But when you tweet it, though, you do have to, because people will rip your head off if you don't like something. So be careful.
Okay, so here's kind of my fundamental issue that I kind of have. I feel like Mando himself has digressed, and that their constant focus of setting up for the next series is diminishing the story in the present and the character in the present, in a sense.
Yep.
And so what I mean by that is, this year, Mando just doesn't seem like Mando. Like, all of a sudden he can't fight. This is a guy who took on this big monster at the end of Boba Fett, and yet a simple gust of wind knocks this guy out for half the episode. And
That's
I
true.
just and so the big thing is this. Sometimes I kind of feel like they don't really know what to do with the show The Mandalorian itself. They know what they want to do with Ahsoka. They know what they want to do with all these series that they're leading up to. But Mandalorian is starting to lose itself a little bit. And this season, for example, I liked the middle part yesterday, because I knew it was okay, we're going to take a break to do some plot and storytelling and what's this all point. And it was purposeful. But Mandalorian going back to his tribe just kind of feels like a cheap, easy. I'm not even sure if I can explain it. I think I would have preferred this season if he had wanted to, or had explored different tribes and what's it like to be a Mandalorian in different settings. And if you decided at the end, it's no, brah, this isn't for me, I'm going back to what I liked, and no, that's fine. But it's just, we never really got this chance for him to explore. And I think about last week, how much more meaningful would it have been if that speech that Bo-Katan was giving to Grogu was her giving it to Mando as they went down the elevator together?
Yeah.
Because otherwise, he's just looking at a castle with absolutely no concept of the history of the place.
Yeah.
He's just going to do a quest for some holy water or whatever, which, okay, to try to prove something. And it's well, you took off your mask for a reason. Don't diminish why you took it off.
Right.
You weren't wrong in taking it off. So anyways, I digress.
No, but I think that's a great point, and I think it's interesting too. And again, this is why I'm kind of a big proponent of making sure they explore what being part of a very devout segment of a religion means. And again, in no way taking away from people who are devoted, etc., but recognizing that those that blindly follow and don't ask, because Mando has never asked a question. Din has never asked a question of the being a child of the Watch, right? He's just oh, okay, I just don't take off my helmet, and if I do, I'm screwed. Got it. Whereas Bo, she and it was interesting, because what was it, last week, the week before, when she said, I didn't embarrass my father, which implies that her sister, Satine, maybe she didn't go through the process and embarrassed her father and pushed back, and that's good. I mean, honestly, without being too too personal. I mean, my daughter is going through religious training right now. She's asking questions, and they're all great questions, and there's not one bad question. And I love that she's asking questions, because that means she's an individual. And to hear what you're saying, Danny, you're spot on. He's missing these opportunities to explore and maybe become better at what he wants to be.
Well, and that, yeah, like I feel like it's a sacrifice of his character development, not asking questions, and I kind of feel like, just maybe for a couple episodes, can they just live in the moment of the Mandalorian and not always be like, okay, we're doing this because we're setting up for Ahsoka. Okay, but you still have a whole season of the Mandalorian. Be like the first season,
right.
Even be like part of the second season, but just this constant setting up for the next is just, I want more development of Mando.
It's a great. Go ahead, Chris.
Go ahead.
No, I don't know if they're setting up for Ahsoka in this one, but I think they're setting up for making more sense out of the or enriching the sequel trilogy. And I think that's what every show is going to do. I don't know if it's like going to be like Marvel, where each ending leads to the next movie or whatever. But I don't know. I like where they're going with him this season, and there's still so much we don't know. So everything that's going on could still make sense. So like when it's all said and done.
Chris, I agree with you from that perspective, and I'm excited to see that they are enriching the sequels and they're expanding the lore. But again, I think the big challenge is the people that got into Mando, and I hate to put on the business hat, especially when I'm wearing the one with the skull of the mythosaur on it. But when you put on the business hat and you listen to things like what Bob Iger said, we're pulling money back. We're not going to be investing as heavily. They need to make sure they're keeping people connected to the show. And if you have the Mark Singers of the world saying, listen, I don't care about it, that's a challenge, because it works for Bad Batch. If Bad Batch doesn't get the viewership, it's expected, right? I mean, I hate to say that, because everybody on the screen, everybody on the chat, everybody who's hanging out with us, we all love the animation. Not one of us is like, nope, screw Clone Wars. But if Bad Batch doesn't do as well as Mando, nobody cares. If Mando does not do well, that's a problem. And if it starts to lose people because they're not too concerned, but are concerned about setting up the next thing, that's where there's a challenge. And I love it. You love it. The four of us on the screen love it. But where it's a challenge longer term is all I'm saying. Yeah, and I'm with you on that.
And listen, I'm a sequel trilogy sim, so anything that fleshes that out, and maybe if we can do what Clone Wars did to Attack of the Clones, then yes, I'm all for setting it up. And I ascended yesterday when I heard March of the Resistance and Snoke's theme.
That was
I ascended.
Great. Yep.
Like especially Snoke's theme more so than anything. Like I was just. I was out of my chair. But the thing is that I was fine with that, because that middle scene, in my brain, I understood that the purpose of that was to better explain that background thing, like why did the First Order rise? What were the underpinnings?
Sure.
The fact that the Empire, like these Empire defectors, were treated like a number, it felt no different. Like it's basically a master with a different hat. 100%. And I liked that element, but the Mando story this season, for 2.5 episodes, the Mandalorian part of the story is leaving me wanting, and I trust that they're going to fix it. I'm not throwing in the towel. I want Mando to develop a little bit more than just saying this is the way 18 freaking times an episode.
Agree. Totally agree.
Totally fair. Yeah. Danny, I love your perspective. I love the points that you bring. Thank you so much for coming in. It's so good to see you. We don't get to see you enough, but we know that, sometimes the internet in Canada has its own way. So thank you for being here, and hopefully we'll see you again sometime soon.
Yes. Love you guys all.
Take care.
Awesome.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Man,
great perspective. And Danny talks about, it's the show called The Mandalorian, and we've had this conversation many times. Is Din Djarin the Mandalorian? Is the Mandalorian Grogu the Destroyer, who's eventually going to rule Mandalore? Is it like it can go so many different directions, and it's taking a long time for me. Actually, it's been hard not to tweet the picture that Chris sent us in the group text earlier this week of Grogu the Destroyer. That's going to have to make an appearance at some point as well. But
Yeah.
I love Danny. I love her perspective. I love the things that she brings to this conversation, and she's not wrong. But I also love, and this is something worth mentioning, Danny has the right fan perspective. She said, it's not working for me. I'm having issues. But guess what? She's not burning couches in her front yard and screaming that everybody else is wrong.
Well, and
it's a personal thing.
I will say it's always disappointing to me and realistic as hell with what she said about what I'm about to say doesn't mean I don't love Star Wars, right? Or doesn't mean that I don't love what I'm seeing. And Dan, I can't disagree. I mean, look, my very first tweet on Wednesday morning was I loved everything that this particular episode of The Mandalorian did, but stylistically it missed for me. And I recognized as I hit send on the tweet, I was like, people are not going to be happy with me. But I mean, we're allowed to not love the way things are being done. You guys all know my feelings.
You're allowed to not love things. You don't have to be an asshole about it. That's
correct.
Really what
I'm not out there looking for anybody who says I like The Last Jedi and beating them up because I like it. If I was going to do that, it would probably be Rise of Skywalker. But that's a
whole different deal.
I'm not going to do that. Hey, let's bring in another caller, shall we?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Here we go.
Here he is,
keeping the streak alive, again. Reading a
comics in hand.
Nobody. They know nothing about those, Eric. They know nothing.
Eric, does that have any of the connected dots in that or the word finds as well?
No, it's a Star Wars.
Okay. How you doing, buddy? Good to see you.
I'm doing good, and I did some research because I couldn't think of who was in it, but we do have 2 Irish actors in Star Wars. We have Genevieve O'Reilly.
Yes. Yep.
And we have Domhnall Gleeson.
Absolutely.
Right. Yes.
Excellent.
And they're both ginger, so like it definitely fits in with the stereotype.
Yeah. Hey, that's why I named my cat Hux, because he likes to scream and he's got red hair. So
there you go.
Here's to Mon Mothma and General Hux.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Eric, so what do you got for us tonight? Any further thoughts on the Zillo Beast, or have we beaten that horse to death?
What do you mean? Have we beaten the Zillo Beast to death?
Have we beaten the Father to death?
I'm just saying, if we see Pershing pick up some scales, I'm not talking about weighing scales. I'm talking about visit scales. I feel like I'm owed some money.
Look, if there's a Zillo Beast direct connection into Ray, I'm sending you something. I don't know what, but I'm promising you here live on air, I will send you something. I don't know what it's going to be, but
I mean, like it doesn't have to be a lot. you can send me like a really crappy toy figure. I'm like, sure, I'll take it. I'll put it on.
I got a lot of those. So what are your thoughts on the show this week, my friend?
I really did enjoy it. I was way more focused in the middle plot with Pershing because I'm a Pershing stan.
Okay.
I don't regret it. I really like his character because he's doing things for bad people, but he himself is not a bad person. Like he actually has a really good heart. He just keeps getting manipulated. And like he has a genuine interest in trying to help people. Like he talks about his mother and that he hopes to do something good for the New Republic. But the New Republic it just has their heads up way of their asses where they don't really meet the needs of the people. Like they're still falling into the same exploitation that was happening during the Galactic era and even before with all these aristocrats saying, oh, I don't know what era this is. Like they don't care. Like they're rich and they keep exploiting the poor.
Which I felt like was an excellent callback to The Last Jedi when Finn and Rose are leaving Canto Bight and they're on the ship with DJ and he's showing him the hologram and he's like, hey, guess what? The people that make this ship also make this ship. It's all the same thing. It's capitalism, it's money, it's power. It just it had a great tie back that was not at all intentional, but those awkward, and I haven't seen it, surprisingly. The cheesiness of the way those scenes were acted with those actors in that lobby of, the auditorium and the whole deal. But it was exactly on brand for people who are so oblivious to the perils of the world and the things that are going on. And they're just like, oh my gosh, can you imagine? I almost got, drafted or conscripted or whatever.
Yep.
Me in the Outer Rim, like so clueless, so, unself-aware. Like it was really, really brilliantly done.
Yep. For sure.
But something that I thought about after watching the scenes in the beginning of this episode is RIP to the foot droid that worked for Bo-Katan. Like,
yeah.
Yep.
Doesn't get mentioned. He just blown up. I was just like, there's no way that he's just gonna pop his head into the cockpit like Babu Frick did.
No, bro.
He's Rise of Skywalker. He's like, I'm here. No, he's dead.
He's the red shirt. He's the red shirt of droids.
Yeah. I'm like, droids keep constantly taking L's in this droid-phobic galaxy. No one cares when someone shoots them or explodes them. Like, you remember the gondola droid? In the first season of Mandalorian, I felt so bad for that droid. Like, the droid was whistling. It was enjoying its life. And here comes Gina Carano just blasting his head off. I'm just like, wow. Like, come on.
How about this? In this episode, when that one droid was ferrying Pershing, I guess, back to the
train.
Attack droid,
yeah. And when he's telling the droid's telling Pershing all this stuff, and he's like barely paying attention, that sort of thing.
Okay.
When Pershing gets out, and he said, the droid says thank you, and like Pershing just keeps walking. I was like, what an a-hole! Thank you to the droid.
Say thank you back.
Say thank you back.
Well,
exactly.
As a guy who has a guy who's taken many taxis back from an airport to a hotel. Sometimes the guy just talks too much, and you just want to get out of that cab.
Fair, totally fair. And I will also have to say, adding to my board, and I actually did search for a way to try and include this on my conspiracy board. When that taxi droid talked about the dome top botanical garden, whatever it was, I'm pretty sure that's the garden that Leia's assistant Winter takes the twins to in that old EU book where there's an attempted kidnapping. But I couldn't make that fit. I couldn't make that happen. Either way.
You seriously lost me. I'm just like, what twins? I'm just like, oh, you're talking about Legends. I'm like,
yeah.
Barely know anything about that.
The real twins. Anyhow.
I'm a canon junkie.
Twins.
There you go. It's fair. Eric, we got to keep you moving. We've got some more folks hanging out in the background. It's always so good to see you. Yeah. It's always good to hear your thoughts, your perspectives.
Thank you for letting me on and talking about Zilla Bees. If anyone's interested, check out Honest to Claude.
Absolutely. Honest to Claude. Brand new show from Eric with now you've got the one episode out. Do you have another one coming soon?
Hopefully, and I'm school and all that.
Awesome. Life, man. Life gets in the way.
We will be watching. We've all subscribed and we can't wait to see it. So have a great weekend. Happy St. Patty's Day, and
we'll see you next week.
Be with you.
Take care, buddy.
Thank you.
Bye. I love all our friends calling in. I really do. So good.
Absolutely.
So cool. Well, we're going to take a quick break because we got more callers and more thoughts and what's going on. So we're going to take a real quick break. And when we come back, we're going to continue talking Mando and Bad Batch here on Force Connect. Welcome back to Force Connect, the streaming Star Wars Network live Friday night show. If you're listening on the replay, thank you so much for checking us out. Make sure to join us this upcoming Friday. We do this every Friday night live on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/at the SSW Network, or go to streamingstarwars.com and get the links to all the spots, all the old shows, because we also do our Thursday show. And this Thursday coming up on Around the Galaxy, Nick and I had the opportunity to sit down with the one and only Mr. Holy crap, I just told his name.
Kyle Newman.
Kyle Newman, thank you. I was thinking Kevin Newman. I was like, it's not Kevin, but Kyle Newman.
He's friends with Kevin Smith, but it's Kyle Newman.
Right. There's that's exactly what I was thinking. But Kyle has a new movie that he's shopping around about the Star Wars Holiday Special. If you're a fan of the Star Wars Holiday Special, even if you're not, and you know it exists, but you want to know more, come and check it out. The show this Thursday. We are going to drop that conversation, and Kyle is just a great guy and a friend of the show, and we're just so happy to be able to do that and have you with us. And also, remember, consider our Patreon program for $3 a month. You could have been part of that conversation. Matt Harrington was with us. Jeff Quaglio was with us. A bunch of other friends were there, and you can be with us as well.
And I just want to say, talking about that documentary, Chris, I'm going to let you jump in too, because I know you've got a thought. They debuted the documentary at South by Southwest last weekend. You and I got to see a screener of it. I think the one that we were sent was about 85 minutes. He told us in the interview they've got a couple more interviews they're trying to add in there. It's not quite finished. They're shopping it. They're looking at release times. They're actually looking at potentially, November 17th, which is Life Day. For the possibility for this documentary to come out. It's so good. And I need the people that watch this show or hear this or hear the interview on Thursday. It's fantastic. It covers behind the scenes stuff, which I love. It covers generational and era and time frame. We're talking about the end of variety shows. We're talking about voices that are lost. J.W. Rensler is featured pretty heavily in this documentary. He did so many of the behind the scenes Star Wars books, but it's also got Kevin Smith, Seth Green, Paul Scheer, like so many voices. It's so good. And I can't wait for y'all to hear not only our conversation, but I really can't wait for the documentary to be out and for everybody to check it out, because for the holiday special to be such a niche pop culture, thing that it is, there's so much there, and it really is fascinating.
It will change your perspective of it. Well, I'm not saying you're going to love it, but it will change your perspective on it 100%. For sure. Chris, what were you going to say, bud?
Well, I do have a question, and Nick kind of did set it up there with saying you guys just saw the screener and everything. So my question is, how much did they talk about the heavy usage of cocaine?
It actually comes up at the very early. It comes up early in the documentary.
Oh, sure. You're serious? Yeah. I knew it. I knew it.
Yes, it was. It was.
We're
great.
Talking 78, and this is kind of maybe the one little tease I'll give. It was in a studio era where Star Wars was so successful. George was working on Empire, and he was initially connected to all of it, but the studios really were the push behind it, because there was a fear that Star Wars was going to be forgotten. The success that they had, the huge release, the huge, initial, holy crap, look at this amazing thing. There was a fear of, is it going to be lost? And so that led into all these kind of cross synergy, like when Donnie and Marie, when, 3PO and R2 were on Donnie and Marie, the holiday special, like all these kind of cross promotional things to keep it going while a sequel was being developed.
And that's what makes it so interesting, is because none of us can think of a world where Star Wars could possibly fall out of the consciousness, and it was all there. It was so cool.
I don't remember seeing the holiday special as a kid, like on TV or anything like that. I'm pretty sure I was probably too busy playing with my Star Wars figures. See, they didn't have anything to worry about.
Right.
We were like us, our age, we were already set and just ready for whatever comes next, if there was something next.
Yeah, and that's what made it so cool. And so I can't wait for this documentary to be out. And Chris, we'll hook you up. Just watch your emails. But we have more callers. We have more people who want to talk. I don't know what they want to. I imagine their heads are still spinning.
I'm going to go ahead and say right now, our next caller.
Yeah.
is going to have comments on my little project board, and I may even have to put my little project board back up on the screen while they're here.
All right, well, let's bring them in.
Let's do it.
Go for Papa Palpatine.
You have a collect call from
Darth Vader.
I gotta take this. Hold on.
There he is, Angry Tasty Cakes. What's up, buddy? How are you?
I'm doing fine.
I'm not even sure. There we go. I'm not even sure how I'm supposed to position the screen at this point.
You can't.
That's right. There's no way to go. How are you, and what is on your mind after I dropped all of this?
There were a couple things I liked, and then Charlie Day just took over my mind for a solid 15 minutes.
Fair.
Yep.
I think my prevailing theory so far, and I know I'm probably going to lose. I'm going to lose, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think we're going to get Thrawn by the end of season 3.
I'm with you.
I truly do.
Tell me where, because I know where we're going to get him. Go ahead. I don't really know for sure, but I'm so confident in my prophecy, as Chris would say.
Listen, hold on. Angry Tate, I'm sorry. Hold on. There's only one seer. Me. I am the prophecy guy.
Okay.
You made a good guess.
Fair.
All right, go ahead. I'm sorry, Tasty Cakes. We had a little infighting here within.
No, carry it. You got popcorn. I can wait. I can watch the show. But no, I was I had to watch the latest episode a couple times actually.
Yep.
Because I was like, I'm gonna miss something. And sure enough, the second time I was like, why does that fighter scene look really familiar? And it's from Rebels. It's the exact same thing from Rebels.
Yep.
That Thrawn used against Phoenix Cell when they were getting that quasar carrier out of
When they all showed
whatever
up.
it was. It was the same tactic and everything. And I was like, no, they can't be crazy enough to do something like that, like they did with Luke. And then I went back and I watched that episode of Rebels, and I was like, that is the same.
Were you the one who posted the two scenes right next to each other? Somebody did.
It wasn't me.
Dude, it's even like the way the fighters fly in.
Yeah,
it's exactly
it's almost identical.
The same. Yes.
What episode is that again?
Season 3, I think, of Rebels, when they were trying to get the quasar out, and like Thrawn's whole battle fleet, they only sent in like a picket line, and then they tried to get out, and suddenly there's a Star Destroyer in their way.
Yeah, sends in a couple, makes you feel like you got it. Then the next wave comes in, you're like,
and also,
shit.
Reminds me a little bit, and it's not entirely the whole thing, but in those Thrawn trilogy books, Heir to the Empire, there's the situation that happens where Luke is in the X-Wing by himself and gets surrounded and like has to basically like tomb himself into the escape pod, and it's a whole like surrounded, outnumbered, super outgunned.
Not even
like,
the Force can save you from the amount of interceptors I'm throwing at you right now. Like
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm sorry, Jason Geeks, I'm going to throw one more thing into that, because I think I'm glad that there's been this sort of mystery about the amount of time between season 2 and 3, because Din has become a master pilot of that N1. He has learned how to use it to hide, to drop the thrusters, to get into position. He's like Luke on the speeder bikes. I mean, he's got those movements going. So I'm sorry, I need to let you talk. You've been waiting, and I just
no, you're fine. I mean, I think one way or another at the end of season 3, we're either going to get Thrawn, we're going to get Ezra, or we're going to get both, because they wouldn't just throw Purgles in for the sake of it, unless they were trying to hint at like one of these guys coming back. There's just no way.
You put it in the first act, you're going to shoot that thing in the 7th or 8th act.
Yeah, 100%. Like, they're not just going to shoehorn something like that in as like a little fan service. No. Filoni doesn't work like that.
I am loving what they're doing, because it's really like, unlike the first 2 seasons where, until you get to Luke, it was very much its own thing, and it wasn't too
just Rudy Tooty Mando Shooty. That's all it was.
Yeah, absolutely.
Shirt right now. I need that on the shirt.
Writing it down.
But I'll work on it. Now it is so much connected to sequel trilogy, to Rebels, to of course the Ahsoka show, and it's connected to Bad Batch in a way, because they're both concurrently doing stuff with the cloning. They're talking about stuff with the cloning. So I do. So I do think that's
Another
you know,
show.
I just love how those parallels are happening.
But so here's what I want to do too. So when we have Mark Singer on in 2 weeks, I'm going to ask my dad, Nick, see if your dad wants to join us.
Absolutely.
Because here's what, and again, I'm going back to this because we are all here sweating and loving every single thing that we saw there. Loving all the Easter eggs on Coruscant, all that stuff was so great. One of the things they did so well in season 2 of Mando was they introduced, and I'm going to go specifically, Bo-Katan was one thing, but introducing Ahsoka, who was this character that meant so much to any of us that were Clone Wars fans, introduced her in a way that did not at any position alienate the fans of Mando by just saying, wow, she was cool. I want to know more. We're now in that spot where they're putting so many ingredients in this cake right now.
Yeah.
And that, to Danny's point, and I think Danny's 100% right, he's taking a back seat. But that's, ultimately for the story, that's probably okay. But keeping in mind the people who love Baby Yoda before we knew he was Grogu, the people who expected, I always go back to my sister-in-law when we walked out of The Rise of Skywalker. She was like, wasn't there supposed to be a Baby Yoda in this movie? That audience is getting lost a little bit here, or at least, and maybe they're not, but that's why I'm so excited to hear from other people in a couple. And I think it's important. I'm glad that we're waiting 2 weeks to be able to get Mark on the show, because let's see where the story goes for the first half of the season. Are they going to pack all that in and then make it make sense? Or are people in 2 weeks going to be like, you know what? I love the show for the first 2 years and they lost me. So it's very curious.
Yeah, and I kind of understand where Danny was coming from. I mean, to be honest, like, I woke up and I chose violence in Star Wars Twitter a couple days ago. Like,
by doing what? Just saying you liked something?
No. Okay. I'm not going to name drop because that's unprofessional. Okay, but the person that I talked about to Pete the other day about, they exposed Disney. How? You just bitch and moan. But what I'm saying is that, like, they had the Lion, the Witch, the audacity of this bitch. She was so egregious in her hate towards the show, and she was giving no actual, basis as to why. And I woke up and I chose violence on it. And it was just, she was like, oh, well, Mon Mothma would never approve of, Pershing being tortured. You're right, she wouldn't, but she's also not omnipotent, and she doesn't understand that things are happening behind the scenes.
Right.
Like, I don't understand. Like, I understand the slowness of the second, that middle portion, and it made sense. But, like, it propelled, I think, a parallel line. I think Pershing, my second theory, is going to be a founding member of the First Order.
Pershing is.
Yes, I truly do. And I'm probably going to shoot myself in the foot and catch some flack for it, but I truly think he's going to be a founding member of the First Order. Or, at the very least, he is going to be the one responsible for penning the program where they kidnap the kids.
Yep. Pershing.
Yeah.
I think he's done. They got what they needed from him. And now she's thus eliminating the evidence, and that's it.
You think he's about to get the departed in the elevator treatment?
He's done. I think he's done.
Chris, I'm with you on that. I think the reason she was there was to make sure that there was nothing more they could squeeze from that sponge.
Oh, maybe. Yeah.
And
because
she fried him. Yep.
Yeah. Elias Kane, the most beautiful woman in all of Star Wars, is.
But the thing is, though,
of the First Order, for real, I think.
Why would they have gone out of their way to get him lab equipment?
I think it was her way to trap him.
To get the info, to get all that research.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah. Okay. No. All right. So redacted. Okay. Black line on that one.
Here's the thing: we're all wrong. That's the best part.
Nobody knows what we're talking about.
And
at this point, we're outside every trailer we've gotten, so everything's on the table.
So one of them are watching us right now, going, "Fucking idiots."
Yeah, right. Never trust a man in a cowboy hat unless it's Sam Elliott. That's all I'm saying. But like, we're in a weird spot when it comes, I think, to the show, because like to an extent, I do agree with with Danny again that Mando's character regressed, but I think there's also some psychological stuff at play. Like, someone on the writing team had to have studied psychology, because if you're part of a cult and you're thrown out into the big wide world, you're not going to like it. And then you're going to sink back to what you know and what you're comfortable with. And if that happens to be said cult, well, so be it. Yeah. And I think with Din being traumatized as a kid during the Clone Wars and then being adopted by like the Death Watch, and that's all he's known for 25 years, like
Yep.
you're going to sink back to what's more familiar to you.
Yep.
100%.
And to a certain extent, I agree, because like second season was the most growth we've seen from him as a character. But
Sure.
then like I kind of see her point where she's like, well, why would he go back? Like, it doesn't make sense. You took your helmet off for a reason. Why are you doing this?
But that, honestly, again, I keep going back to the fact that they are painting him as the person who is unwillingly or unknowingly being sucked into a cult or a sect or a very deep part of something and is not 100% clear on their own thoughts. Angry, we have another caller waiting in the wings, and we are so happy that you kept your streak alive so far. It's very close, and we're so happy to see you every week. I'm looking forward to I'm not going to catch you next week because I'm going to be, as I mentioned,
it's a lovely break for you, I'm sure.
Sometimes I got to get away from Chris and Nick. And I mean,
fair.
How can you blame me? But
Totally fair.
I'm excited. Thank you so much for hanging out with us again tonight. Your patience is a virtue, and we appreciate you coming in. And I love hanging out with you also on Twitter. So let's keep that going. And we're gonna force push you out of here for now, but we'll see you next week.
I will be here. I'm sure you're all delighted.
Awesome. Absolutely.
See you,
All right, see you.
Yeah, man.
I will tell you, the problem with Bad Batch and Mando coming out the same time.
It's too much to talk about.
We should talk about it. So much to talk about. But you know what? I as Nick, you and I and Chris, the three of us, we get our little chats going, and we keep talking about how we're just so happy to like we look forward to these Friday conversations, and that is no joke. When we see people coming up in the for a little behind the scenes, we see people like dialing in. When you hit that link that we put up in the chat, please, the link is still there. So feel free to join us if you got something to say. We want to hear it. But when we see different people that we know popping up in the back, it excites us, and we get ready to go. And in fact, we have somebody else waiting back there right now. So let's bring in our next caller.
And who might you be?
Hello there.
Hey.
Brian,
What's up?
One of the best things about when Brian calls in is I always have to look at what's in the back because I feel like you're. Are you changing those things on a regular basis?
I have been. I haven't changed it in like 2 weeks though.
Okay. Well,
I'm still running Pelly and Frog Lady though.
Well, I'm just noticing the Two Tubes, who is to me the most underrated. He is my Glupshido. If nobody ever asked me who my Glupshido is,
he is one of the most gluppiest.
Oh,
he is the gluppiest of the shiddos, and I just love my Two Tubes. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing fantastic. How you doing, boys?
Good. I'm sorry I wasn't able to get you a ticket or I wasn't sorry you weren't able to take advantage of the ticket to go see our friends Bayside on Sunday night last week.
It was the only night I had to go to work in about a period of 2 weeks because I was at a conference all the previous week. That was my first day back into work, and now I'm going to another conference for work on Sunday. So
man,
this the one day I had to show into the
pandemic lightening up is really screwing with your schedule, man.
Come on, man.
So, but for those of you who don't know, by the way, I'll just throw this out there because there's a handful of shows that I without any push promote because I love them. And one of them is Thank the Maker, which is Nick Gambarian from Bayside, the band Bayside. It is Adam Russell from Story of the Year and William Ryan Key from Yellow Card. Three like early 2000s, emo bands. I hate to call them emo. They'd probably slap me in the face. And they're just the greatest guys. Nick and I actually hung out a little bit before the show. Yeah, pop punk, right. Nick was so cool. Nick was like, come on in. We'll hang out a little bit before the show. Got to talk to him a little bit.
Oh, now I'm really mad about missing it.
Oh, dude. I was going to tell you that part, but when you said you couldn't make it. But Bayside put on a hell of a show. If you're and Bayside's new music is so good. So you got to go check it out. But that's not why you called, Brian. I'm sure you didn't want to hear about what you missed. Just a great high energy show in Jersey City. But hey, it's good to see you.
It's absolutely great to see you. But I do have to say, not the same conspiracy theory as Nick.
Okay.
I really was wondering. I have my own conspiracy theory, not the same, but I do co-sign off of yours.
All right. Well,
Or
let's
at
hear your
least
hot
quite
take.
a bit of it.
You got to have a hot take in there somewhere.
Well, my thing is, I seem to be. Well, mine. I really love the Christopher Lloyd as Joris.
I want that now. That has to happen.
Now that is an earworm that's not. I'm not digging out anytime soon. Yeah. But no, like my conspiracy thing is that I think Elia Kane is New Republic intelligence.
Ooh.
I don't think she has any. I think she's just, she's just doing their wet work.
You're saying
Nice.
Katie O'Brien is New Republic.
Yeah, I think she was planted in Gideon's to begin with.
Wow.
And now, because here's the thing, she walks off that Star Destroyer with Pershing in front of what, a dozen New Republic security forces and a gunship overhead with a spotlight on it, and she just walks off.
She's internal affairs, baby.
They know her. They know who she is. She is like their version of the CIA. But you have to remember, this is the same group. And like I said earlier, what Mon don't know, don't hurt her. This is the same group that you had Draven and Kraken and, Magna Tolvin. They were just going out and just executing people during the rebellion on that side of things.
Magna Tolvin is from the comic books, Nick and Pete. Just so you know.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You got
magnets. I have magnets on my fridge. What?
You know what? Oh, I can't knock people out of the street.
Andor, you know who Cassian Andor is, right?
Yes.
He did some bad things, just like Kane is doing.
Okay. That makes sense. No, actually I do like that because I can't figure her out.
My thing was when she was trying to pump him to see if they don't want him doing any of the cloning stuff. And once he said he wanted to go in and back and do it, they decided they need to get rid of him. Because
that's fair.
If he's going to keep up, he's going to wind up going either with some Imperial remnant or just some splinter cell of something. They just don't want him out there.
So they want to take him out so that he can't be picked up by.
Yes.
Okay, interesting. I can't disagree with that. I think that's a smart move too. Chris, what are your thoughts? You're thinking something.
Either she is a double agent and she's working for Gideon or the First Order, Palpatine or whatever. I do think, in her defense, she's maybe secret. Of course, she's working with the Republic, but I do think she's definitely a double agent.
But I really loved the way, and again, there's a couple things going on in this particular episode. And I'm sorry to jump on your time here, Brian, but
not at all. It's your show.
It's kind of true. I mean, but whatever. We're glad you're here. It's your show. It's the listener show. It's the people who join us on Friday nights. It's their show. The two things that came out of this. One was trying to eliminate Pershing for what reason, and I love where you're going with that, but I do also feel like there was never a moment where I was comfortable with Katie because Kane, but Katie O'Brien, because there are two things that they threw into this show casually that we're going to go back and go, holy cow, they told us. One was when they were sitting around the table and they said, well, I heard Gideon escaped on his way to his tribunal. That was just casually thrown in there, and everyone's like, oh yeah, well, that could happen. The second thing was when Bo-Katan said, that's a lot of ships for just a warlord, and that's the implication of Thrawn. And I was going to say it before when maybe when I don't remember who said it was, it might have been Tasty Cakes, but that's why I believe, and I was expecting to see the Chimera waiting for them as they tried to escape the planet there, but Thrawn definitely dumped those TIE fighters in on them, for sure, and bombed.
You guys have that. I've been convinced of that tonight.
Yeah.
Or who's that one character? I don't know if you guys have read the books for Aftermath and all that. Gallius.
Rex?
Yeah.
Gallius Rex.
But he should be dead
at this point.
Yeah, because he died at the end of the Aftermath books.
Oh, you're right.
Could have been Ray Sloan.
Years. I never finished that trilogy. I gotta get back on that.
Same.
Chris, those are
Well,
the only,
I figured you
those
guys.
are the only books that I like. Are the Chuck Wendig books? Yeah,
I'll be
right.
perfectly honest. I'm 100% with you, Chris. I got like half to maybe 3/4 of the way through the first one, and I love Chuck Wendig. Like, I love him as an author. I love him as a personality. That's as far as I've gotten, and it's one of the. It's like it's on my to-do list. Like, I just need to suck it up and do it. But I haven't.
Did you make it to Dancing Jar Jar?
I didn't.
Oh man, yeah.
All right. Well, we all have our crosses to bear, I suppose.
Now, I have to ask because I missed the beginning because it's my daughter's birthday tomorrow, so we're decorating upstairs and she went to bed.
It's awesome.
Did we discuss Scar Squadron tonight?
We referenced it.
Okay.
Hold on. Well, hold on. We're just gonna go ahead and we're just gonna do it this way.
Brian, what's left to discuss, my friend? Everything.
It's not a discussion. It's a prediction from you.
It's not a prediction. It's not a theory or anything like that. It's just absolute foregone conclusion. It's like I've been to the future. I've seen what is going to happen. I don't know how many times I gotta keep telling you people that this is what is going to happen.
Wait for it. Is this Chris's Star Wars theory?
The Prophet Christopher?
Chris just left.
He just left.
It's one that didn't work. He just left.
He's gone.
Damn it.
Brian,
what else you got?
I just have one rant. So we all know Pershing's mind got whatevered by the Mind Flayer.
Yeah.
Can that be reversed by Borgullet?
Ooh.
Well, Borgullet will know the truth.
Can Borgullet extract?
Wait a minute. You do Orlando. Do you also do?
Yes. Yes, I can do a Saw Gerrera as well. Borgullet will know the truth.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Every day, more lies.
Amazing.
Oh, this is why Chris is on the show. A lot of people think it's just because we like him, but no, it's the voices. It's only the voices.
Someone has to talk about the comics.
This is true.
He's got to balance the two of us idiots out. Brian, it is truly a pleasure every week to get to see you, to get to hang out, to get to connect. I'm excited for maybe this summer. There's a little rumor of some Fan Expo Philly on the horizon.
Yeah. Are you coming up?
I'm just floating it out there right now.
We are preparing
the goat shed.
We are preparing here at Winterview Farm for a potential guest arrival. Yes. Right.
So, in the meantime, we hope we see you next week. We hope we see you in the weeks to come, and I can't wait to hear how your thoughts, your feelings, all the things that you are getting from both Bad Batch, Mando, and whatever else we get along the way. So, thank you for being here. Always a pleasure to get to talk to you, and may the Force be with you.
Absolutely, dudes. Check you later.
See you later, buddy. I almost feel like at some point we're gonna have to do a whole show of just Brian and a whole show of just Angry Tasty.
Exactly.
We could go on forever with these guys, and I wish we could. But we don't. Like Saturday mornings kind of suck sometimes. That's what happens. Like when you get kids. But we're gonna take a quick break, and when we come back, me, Nick, and Chris are gonna wrap up with some of our thoughts as we look into next week, and I think that's a good way to go. We'll go from there, and I'm gonna run a little quick break here, but we'll be back in just a minute with more Force Connect on the streaming Star Wars Network. Now, a lot of you are familiar with this guy right here, but what you might not know is that he's been forced to handle some serious abuse at the hands of what used to be the Empire. Now I gotta warn you, what you're about to see may be a little triggering.
You know how it is. I said, shut up. What is that thing? Well, we should check and see if it's hurt. The last thing that you want is to give Gideon a bag and have him open it up and find whatever is left. Okay, look, here you go. See? Take a peek. Everything's fine. What is that? I don't know. It's a pet or something. A pet? Ow! Serves you right.
Serves you right? That's all he's got to say after a fellow trooper punches a child? This is not right. These guys need to be identified. This took place on Navarro. Let's find these guys.
Well, welcome back to Force Connect, the streaming Star Wars live Friday night show. Listen, I'm telling you once again, if you're listening to this show during the week before you watch Mando and Bad Batch, thank you so much for hanging out there. But don't forget, you can join us live on Friday nights. We'll take your calls. You've heard it. We've had some great calls from great friends of the show. If you're a friend of the show, please join us on Friday nights. And also, I'll tell you what, one more thing. We talked to you about being a patron. We'd love you to be a patron. We'd love you to pay $3 a month to hang out with us live when we do the shows, but that's not the most important thing you can do. The best thing, the most important thing you can do for Force Connect, for streaming Star Wars, for Around the Galaxy, for Podcast of the Wheels, for Broaxium, is when you see our shows posted on social media, share them. Tell people about them. If you're having fun with these shows, look, there's a million, literally. I haven't done the count because I don't have that kind of time, but there are so many Star Wars content creators, and there's so many good ones. I love so many of them. There's such good people out there. But if you're enjoying us, tell people about it. It helps us out and help spread the word. So thank you so much for being a part of the show. Nick, Chris, it's been a long night, but I feel like we still have some things that we want to chat a little bit about. There's so many things that went down. I want to talk a little bit more about this this Thrawn theory and when we're going to see Thrawn in this series. First of all, first question to you guys: are we going to see Thrawn in Mandalorian?
Yes, but I don't think it's going to be anytime soon.
You think it's
got to be like
end of season? Yeah.
No, it'll be this season, but I think like 7th or 8th episode.
Yeah. And I don't think he plays a big part. I think he's unveiled, right? I think we're going to see his ship. Those of us who are nerds are going to be like, oh my God, do you see that red dragon that's painted on his Star Destroyer? That's Thrawn. And just a brief. I think it's going to be like the end of season 2 when we get the Book of Boba Fett tease. Not after credits, but it'll be at the end of the episode.
With that actor who, I forgot his name, but he's on The Flash, who played Thanos in the Avengers movie.
Yeah.
Where like he turns his head for like a quick second.
Yep.
Give me something like that. And that'll be enough. That'll be enough for me.
Yeah.
I'm good.
And that's exactly what I was going to say. Was the Thanos comparison was exactly what I was going to use as well. A tease towards the end. Here I am. Here I'm coming. That comes to boil in the Ahsoka show. Like that's where, the bigger, heat of that comes in. We know Ahsoka and Skeleton Crew are both a part of this whole deal. Josh Brolin, JD said.
No. There's an actor who played. Excuse me. There's an actor who who played Thanos before Josh Brolin, before Brand from Goonies.
In the Flash TV show, right?
He's also in the Flash TV show in a couple of the later seasons, like Goldface or something.
Damien Poitier.
Sure.
Damien Poitier portrayed Thanos for his brief appearance in the Avengers years before Josh Brolin appeared.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have the best listeners. Not only are they fun to talk to, but they're smart. They're smart, and they're smarter than us. Which honestly, some days not so hard. Not a big compliment, to be fair.
I totally preferred that Thanos to Josh Brolin.
Did you really?
Yeah. He looked like comic book Thanos, like the jawline and everything.
You didn't like scrotum chin? You weren't a big
no, that's still there. I mean, that's a that's a Thanos thing. But but yeah. I kind of preferred his like that look that he had. Oh yeah. But Brolin was awesome. Come on, Brand from the Goonies. Love that guy.
That's right.
Greatest kid movie ever.
It's true. It's true. So I mean, can we all agree that Thrawn dropped those TIE fighters on it, right?
Yes.
Yes. And I love Nick's point about I think if they dig deeper into Mandalore, they're gonna find that Thrawn's building his fleet there.
Yep.
I think they have spread the Mandalorians throughout the galaxy. I mean, even Din says it, right? Where spread like stars throughout the galaxy.
Yes.
they've convinced every one of them that the air was unbreathable until R5D4 was like, nope,
I
we're
would say
good.
they made a whole big deal out of atmosphere and what's breathable, what's habitable, what's not. You get through the rough, re-entry into the planet part, and all of a sudden, under that cloud, oh wait, everything's fine.
And look, I am again being very mindful not to be too hard on religious zealots, but if you say, hey, it's a classic sky is falling, right? Hey, that planet, you didn't follow the dark saber, you took off your helmet, your planet is no longer livable. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah,
okay,
you go back.
Bummer, dude.
So they bought into it. And here's the Mandalorian going back there going, wait a minute, we can do this. And then we're going to get Bo, who's going to be like, and by the way, there's still a mythosaur under there. I'm going to ride that.
Yeah, she is holding that card.
So that's the next question I wanted to ask both of you guys. What's she doing? Well, she knows it's there. And Din, again, to Danny's point, Din was like, should I have asked a question? No. So what's she going to do with that?
Go ahead, Chris.
I think she's waiting for the right moment, because I don't even know it. I can't tell if she said this is the way back when everyone else said it when she was inducted into.
She did. She did say this is the way.
She did.
Yep.
You sure?
Yep.
Okay.
Sure.
Or
I'm going to go to Disney Plus while you do that, and I'm going to double check.
But I still don't think she. And I'm just going by the magnificent mask acting, as I call it. I don't think she's definitely not devout. Part of this thing. Sure. I don't know if you're holding that information. Yeah, something's up, and she's going to use that to.
She's using it for her own advantage, for sure.
Because seeing that mythosaur did something for her, and that just maybe that reignited her, her passion to become the ruler of Mandalore once more. And she doesn't have the dark saber, so she's like, well, I have another way to get here, and that's gonna be with that dark saber with the mythosaur. So yeah, I think that she's holding on to that. I don't think she's really in it to win it with the Children of the Watch.
Yeah. And I think I agree with that. I think that the way I see it, she is, again, with the magnificent mask acting, easy for you to say. That head turn, that pause, that little moment of, am I going to say this? Okay, I'm going to say it. Like, she's biding her time. She's figuring out, am I going to commit to this? And I think it's exactly for what you said. Like, there's still a bigger picture for her, the same way that we watched Elia Kane have a bigger picture. And like, every time I was like, no, I think she means it. I'm like, I don't think I believe her. Like,
I need to let Chris know he's right. She does not say this is the way. She looks around, she mask acts it. Everybody walks around, taps her shoulder like everybody did. And she's just like,
the same way that Paz Vizsla's kid in the episode with the helmet didn't say the vows.
No one finished their vows, man.
Yep. Not even Din.
No one. Not even Din.
Nope. Yep. Din didn't finish either. When
it's like going to it's like going up for the sacrament at the Catholic Church and just passing on the cracker. You're like, hey, nope, I'm here for everything else, but that
these.
part I can't do it.
I'm just here for the blessing.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Next time I'm in church, I'm going to say this is the way and see what happens. See if
you're like, that's the way out the door.
That's the
way. Right. Actually, maybe I'll wear one of these helmets. I got a nice Bo-Katan helmet.
That new Phase 2 clone trooper will be perfect.
That will go over great at my daughter's
I need to see if I can say one thing about that whole Coruscant part of this episode. I was literally floored watching the whole thing, just seeing sort of like day to day, like not any adventure or anything like that, just people living. I was like, give me this all the time. You could have a whole show where it's just a slice of life, and I will watch every minute of it. Like I love that.
But the point again, we would love it. But the people who watch,
who cares about them? And I want to
know
see
it is all about Chris, and honestly, every
Always all
morning the
about
first thing I do is I ask myself, what's going to make Chris happy today, and I try to go there. But it is interesting,
Fair.
and I'm really excited and interested to hear that conversation beyond, because, and I think that's one of the things that, you know, we talk a lot about, quote unquote, the Generation X, our generation of Star Wars fans, right?
Mhm.
And you have a lot of people just bitching, frankly, at from our generation about everything they can, because honestly, that's where the money is in Star Wars. YouTube creations is in the complaining, and it's very easy. The three of us could very easily get on here and say, listen, this isn't the Star Wars I remember. This
Right.
isn't the Star Wars that I grew up with. And but there's no reason to not enjoy it. But the question then becomes, like I said, and Mark Singer, I can't wait for him to be on and to get his perspective. You know, will the series come back around to be the thing that pulled everybody? Because honestly, if you look at, and it's interesting, I was thinking about it because when they showed the previously on, right, the first time I watched the episode, I don't watch that because I don't want to be tipped off, because the previously ons basically say, here's what you're going to see on this episode. Is a little too on the nose, right? So I don't watch it. But the second time when I watched it with my son, I watched it, and there was almost a different feeling to the show with the first time we met Pershing, right? There was a very different, the show did have a different feel. And I'm not saying better or worse, but it was different. It's the same people again who said, you know, I can't watch Mando now because I saw Andor, and then they complained that we got an Andor type episode in Mando. But it's not season 1 of Mando. And that's, I mean, that means the show has evolved. The show has grown. But you know, it's the same people who liked the, again, you all know my concerns about my challenges with the Rise of Skywalker, but the Rise of Skywalker worked for more people than the Last Jedi, more quote unquote normies, because you had the Emperor, you had a lot of spaceships, you had cool battles, you had familiar types of things, and that's okay. You're pointing to JD saying, I don't think anyone should be overly critical until we see a finished product. And that's 100% fair.
100%
100% fair. But I'm gonna caveat that and say people don't have patience. This is why Willow is not coming back anytime soon, because Willow was a fun show and it worked. And if you stayed through all 8-9 episodes of it, it was fantastic.
Yeah.
But people have short attention spans,
People
and
have
especially
short
in the
attention
streaming world,
Yep.
right? I mean, I love Last of Us, but when the finale came on, I was like, "Oh, that's right, that's tonight," and I didn't think about it. And you know, and the competition, and Bob Iger raised it in his latest conversations, latest presentations, is the competition in the streaming space is very tight right now, and for Star Wars to continue to be successful on Disney Plus, it's got to keep. They got us right. They could show Bo-Katan reading the Mandalorian phone book, and we're gonna be like, "That was awesome! Did you hear what name she said?" And, right. But my son. I mean, honestly, the thing is, my son was not riveted to the screen for this episode of The Mandalorian. He wasn't. And that's a problem for Disney Plus. It's not a problem for us. And in 5 years, he'll watch it again and be like, oh, that Pershing episode was really cool, because he'll have grown into it. But right now, and that's a challenge. That's a challenge. And I hate to say it, because you know that, I mean, when I was, as I said, stylistically, it didn't work for me the first time around. But the story was fantastic. So I'm sorry to be a downer, but I'm trying to focus on what they need to do to keep this going for Beyond Us, because at the end of the day, I mean, let's face it, the Marvel shows, right? And I would call myself a Marvel normie. I love the Marvel stuff. I haven't missed a movie. I haven't missed a show, but Miss Marvel, and even the Hawkeye show, I was like, okay, it was fun. I enjoyed it, but I didn't like. It felt like it lost something for me. So again, I'm not saying that there was, again, as a fan, I loved it, but I wonder how this building this world, because again, Clone Wars. Who watched Clone Wars all 7 seasons? the people that we talk to on Twitter every day, but not my dad, not my brother-in-law, who's a Star Wars fan. He didn't watch any of it. So just throwing that out there, and not to be negative, but just to be real about what the show needs to do on top of what we want it to do. So there you go.
Legit.
There you go.
100%.
With that, now that I've brought us down to way to go, Pete. I'm really excited about what's coming next. I think this week's Mandalorian is supposed to be like 35 minutes long. I think it's going to be all Mando. I think we're done with the Coruscant story for now. I think they set that up so that we're going to understand why Thrawn and why Gideon are back. Mm-hmm. And I think this next episode is going to be pirates. I'm calling pirates in this next
nice
episode.
Sigmund's coming back.
So I think Sigmund yep.
Yuzong Vaughn.
Okay, you can have that. You can take that.
No, you can't have that.
No, he can't. I agree. No, he can't.
Christopher, what is going? I'm gonna try different background music this week. Let's try this one. What's going on with Broaxium this week? Let's see how this works out.
Well, this Sunday we've. I don't know. So this Sunday, shooting the poodoo, we have that. Now, I think it's tentative because Dan and Julia are very, very close.
Any moment now.
Very close. Any moment, Papa Dan. So we'll see. We also have a new quick shot this week that'll be Darth Vader number 33, I believe. Can't wait to read that one by Greg Pak. It's a comic book, guys.
Yeah, but he did the other Vader series stuff, right? With Charles, right?
Vader
Charles
down.
Soule?
No. The first Vader series was Kieran Gillen. The second Vader series was Charles Soule. Then this current one, the last one.
What did Greg Pak do last time? Because I thought I liked what he did.
What did he work on for Star Wars?
Something. I'll look it up.
I forgot what else he worked on for Star. There's a Tarkin comic back here that he had worked on, and a few other things. But yeah, so we have that for quick shots. There may be a BX Gaming on Tuesday. This is all depending on what goes down with Dan and Julie.
Sure.
Sure. Yeah, so we got those. We have now. It's either going to be a new episode of the Dandalorian, or it's going to be a Mandalorians episode. It's going to be one of the two.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'll be filling in for Dan for that, giving the top 3 moments from this episode. It's going to be a tough job for just 3 moments because the whole thing was incredible. So, we'll see. So that's what we got going on in Broaxium this week.
Love it.
Awesome. And Nick, what do we have? We talked a little bit about it before, but what do we got going
on? We have, I know this past week you dropped a ATG episode talking about the Cantina event that's going to be at Star Wars Celebration.
Yep.
Definitely want folks to check that out. You can find it in the ATG Cast podcast feed. Also coming up April 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th, there's a little thing called Star Wars Celebration going on in a little place called London, England. I will not be there. Pete will not be there. Chris will not be there. Nope. But we have teamed up with the lovely folks from Tarkin's Top Shelf to do some live at home coverage. So we've got some things in the works. We've got some on-site correspondence. We're going to kind of do some end of the day recaps, talk about what's going on at Celebration, even though we can't be there. We'll be live all those nights. So we want everybody to check that out. And then real quick, Nick.
Yeah, go ahead. Have you guys seen the badges that they're getting for this London
amazing.
Show? Are you upset as I am because they weren't because the ones for Anaheim were like, I'll take it. I mean, it's over there somewhere. But can I get a grief?
Yeah.
Anyone who's going to Celebration, I need a couple of things. Besides the Vader figure, the exclusive and the exclusive comic, I need a grief Karga badge. Somebody
hook Chris up. Somebody that's going to be there.
Steal it from a child if you need to. Is all.
Hey, exactly.
Hey,
it's for Chris. It's for Chris.
You gotta do what you gotta
do. So that's all coming up, and then also, as we mentioned earlier in the show, this coming Thursday on Around the Galaxy, Pete and I interviewed Kyle Newman, director of Fanboys, one of the producers on the Disturbance in the Force documentary about the holiday special. It really is fantastic. It's a great conversation. Look forward to everybody having a chance to check that out. And of course, looking forward to that movie coming out, sometime later this year. But it's cool to get that kind of in process and get to be a part of, helping spread the word about it.
Yeah, and Kyle has really become a fan and friend of the show, and he's just
for sure.
He's a great guy, and he's a Jersey boy like myself. He's not that far from Chris and Philly, and but yeah, we'll be bringing that to you this week. And so JD is apparently headed to the UK, so JD is going to have to be doing some live from London for us.
He's going to help us out.
All right,
some on-site man on the street reporting.
He just accidentally volunteered for something, so that's great. But guys, this has been a ton of fun. It's been another epic long episode, but
big night.
So much fun talking to you guys. Look forward to this every single Friday, gentlemen. We will. Well, I won't see you next week. You're going to be with Brian from Pink Milk, and I'm not going to lie, I'm a little jealous that I don't get to hang out with him. But you guys are going to have a blast, and I have a feeling we're going to have. Here's my prediction for next week. You're going to have more Bad Batch to talk about than Mando. I'm just throwing that out there. But gentlemen, it was great to see you. Have a wonderful Friday, a great St. Patrick's Day. Thank you all for hanging out with us tonight. And Nick, may the Force be with you.
Always.
Just one more round, friend, then homeward bound, friend. Don't forget me in your dreams. Just one more song, friend, and then so long, friend. The nights get shorter, it seems. Just one more rhyme, friend. Yes, it's a crime, friend. But you know time, friend. Time can fly. So it's good night, friend. Good night, but not goodbye.